Okay, everyone, are we ready to start? Yeah, excellent. Welcome, everyone. My name is Danny Smith. I'm a principal strategist for artificial intelligence and machine learning in charge of automotive, industrial, and manufacturing globally. So today I want to talk to you about how generative AI can help with the manufacturing skills gap. So this is what we'll talk about. We'll talk about the skills gap. We'll talk about maybe the current state of AI in the industry. Talk about how generative AI can help, and then we talk about generating some value. So who here knows the skills gap? You have the skills gap? So skills gap, this is a statistic showing the skills gap in the US. I have one for Europe in just a moment. I was in Singapore a couple of months ago, and I said, does anyone have a hard time finding workers for their factories? They all said yes. So there's a huge gap between what manufacturing needs and the amount of workers coming in. So my colleague Joe talked about it just a minute ago. He said 30-year veterans are retiring. Next generation didn't come in. The generation that my daughters are came in, but they have different expectations. So the gap in the US is strong. Here's details on what type of work. So if you see, it's focused more on the shop floor, right, which is where the challenge is. Here's some statistics from Europe, right? So Europe, if you see, again, weighted on the technical aspects of the shop floor. Right? And then details on, where the interest lies or where the gaps are. So what's interesting is no matter if you're in Europe or America or Asia, the interest at the very top of the organization, the thing that the CEO worries about the most is talent. It's not geopolitical instability. It's not the price of oil or the price of Bitcoin. It's finding talent. And the skills that the talent needs are different, right? So this is an interesting study. I suggest you read all these. If you want the presentation, you can download it. You can see all the links. But the differences between the skills needed on the shop floor are trending towards technology skills, right? There's a lot more need for technology knowledge at the shop than there was before. And so, of course, if you don't close the skills gap, bad things happen, right? You have lower production, which impacts sales, which impacts customer service, net promoter score, all of the bad things you don't want to happen because you don't have the people on the shop floor. So let's talk about how artificial intelligence can help or maybe is not helping, and then we can talk about generative AI. So if you look at the industry as a whole, generative AI is actually interesting, but traditional AI is still early days. We don't use a lot of traditional machine learning in manufacturing. So here's an example. Like if you look at where all the people are, right? If you look at supply chain, finance, where there's analysts, you see no support, really, no penetration of existing machine learning technologies. Where you see the most, interestingly, is on the shop floor itself, right, on the production line. So it's still early days. Now, this same study, survey, they said, what's the challenge? Well, data is always the challenge, but it's not the way you think. Manufacturing has plenty of data, right? We have literally millions of records of telemetry off of sensors. If you look around Hannover Messe, you see every machine sending data somewhere. The challenge is contextualizing data. It's understanding what the data is telling you. This is where generative AI might be interesting. Here's another interesting statistics from this survey. They said everyone agreed that AI was going to impact the workforce. But 2/3 didn't actually have a training budget. So the hope is, I think, that generative AI can actually help, right? The technology can help the worker adapt quicker. One last statistic. This is a survey on what's most important when somebody's buying software. It's the user experience, right? So if you think about the skills gap, the fact that we don't have enough people coming in, and the fact that they are coming into an environment that they haven't been trained on, how do you bring them up fast? This is the interesting piece of technology. So let's talk about how generative AI can help. So there's no doubt generative AI is very interesting. It's because we have a bunch of management consultants telling CEOs, you need to pay attention to this, right? You should read these reports because they're actually quite insightful. Here's another from McKinsey. It's really about how do we give productivity improvements to everyone in the organization, from the shop floor, maintenance, quality, but also supply chain, sales, finance, HR. So the potential of generative AI to accelerate all work is very high. This is what we see, right? So we see improving customer experiences, we see employee productivity, etc., right? If you look at this, what you see is it's about accelerating the human. My friends at Boston Consulting, so Andre, he had a really good presentation a few weeks ago, and they have this great term. It's like, how do we disrupt the ugliest 4 hours of work? And so what their research showed was basically the things people like to do the least is what generative AI can really help them with the most. And they said, we can give people 4 hours back a week. How many people would like 4 hours back? I'll give you 30 minutes back at least, right? Now what's interesting is when we interview people, we say, are you worried about it? Do you think it's going to be valuable? If you look within the manufacturing sector, most workers say, you know what, this could actually help me do my job. It's going to be a positive. They're not worried about losing their job to the software. They're worried about how quickly can I get the software so that I can do my job better. Okay, so one last interesting piece. How are people using it today? So this was a study out of Harvard Business Review. So it turns out if you look at these categories, 2/3 roughly are using the technology to learn how to do their job better. The 1/3 are using it to innovate. And I'll bring a few examples here. So for AWS, I serve as executive sponsor on 80 different projects across manufacturing, across industrial, across automotive. These are some of the things that my customers are doing. I want to bring you a few examples. I'll start with the most popular use case. And it's really about interacting with knowledge. So I'm going to talk about accelerating a repair technician, but this is a true story. My daughter, who has graduated from college, she has a job, all good, not in manufacturing, but in industrial. When she was in high school, she was driving to her final exam and the car breaks down. So because of who I am, I want to know what's going on. So I stick the ODB device into the CAN bus and I see the fault codes coming off of the powertrain of the vehicle. This is what I wanted to ask. I said, oh, what are this P11, P12, P16 fault code? What could the root cause be? Now, interestingly, it gives some really good answers. It said, oh, that's variable camshaft timing. Yeah, that's correct. It said, oh, by the way, the mechanic told me later, he goes, oh, it was a stuck solenoid valve. Well, interestingly, the Gen AI identified that this was the problem. But if you think about it, if I'm the worker now investigating an issue, whether it's a car or whether it's a big rotating piece of equipment, right, from all of our friends, at Hannover, you want to ask questions, right? So the question is, hey, what other fault codes could I have? Or, what did I ask? What other possible causes could be? This is the one I like the best. Write me a diagnostic plan to figure out what the problem is. because this accelerates the time to diagnosis, it accelerates the time to repair. And it actually gave a really good answer. I would get to step 3, and I would have found out what the problem was with my daughter's car. Okay, here's some other examples. So if you're in IT and you're building something in Amazon, Amazon has a lot of options. So you can ask questions. Hey, how do I do this? Right? And then what if I wanted to only do it in containers and use something serverless? And it gives me an idea. So it's not just about code generation, which is popular, but it's about development assistance. Here's another example. I'm an analyst, and I want to ask questions of my data. This is a typical job of an analyst, right? Your boss calls you and says, hey, I have a problem, go figure out what the data is, come back to me with the answer. So if I could just write a question, tell me about how to improve sales, and it goes and finds the data, and then it writes the narrative for me. Think about how much this could accelerate people in sales, marketing, finance. Everyone works with spreadsheets, right? Everyone works with data. Think about how powerful that could be. So if you think about it, the value chain of a manufacturer is pretty broad. There's opportunities everywhere. Question I would ask all of you, what questions would you like to ask? Right? But it's to improve service or grow revenues or make better decisions. I have a graduate degree in decision science, not data science. So making better decisions is very interesting to me. So let's talk about generating value. So here are the keys. There are always trade-offs. And as a business, you have to decide between cost and quality and performance or latency, right? So if you're on the line of business side, you need to focus on value and the quality of the result. If you put in a Gen AI application, you need to make sure that it answers accurately, correctly. We are fact-based in this business. We don't want to make up anything, right? So if your line of business focus here, IT can cover the side of, well, how do we do it at low performance or high performance and low cost, right? Here's what I don't want you to do. This is a study from a venture capitalist, and they asked all of their companies, how are you determining ROI? 60% said, well, we don't really think about ROI. Who here can get away with a project that doesn't think about ROI? Yeah, no one, right? This is what you're going to say to the CFO? Oh, I didn't think about the value. I didn't think about the cost. Come on, right? So don't do that. But if I turn it around, like what drives manufacturing? What's the profit center of a manufacturer? Production line, right? So if we think about where we can add value, my question is what if we could get a 1% improvement in maintenance or in quality? What would that do for your bottom line? This is where your CFO, Chief Financial Officer, would love you, right? So here's one last thought. If you're going to accelerate the entire organization, generative AI is actually a pretty interesting thing to do it with. This is an example of one of my customers who is in the industrial space. And they said, we know AI and ML is going to change our business. How do we make sure that everyone in the organization can understand how to use it? Right? And so they came up with this great line. It was so good, I said, I have to use that in a slide. They said, AI ML should be like oxygen to us. And not in the bad way for those chemical people out here, not in a combine and it burns up everything, but in bringing life to the organization. And so they put a plan together that we helped them with to kind of bring that knowledge to every worker. So no matter what role you're in, I challenge you to think about how you can benefit from the technology. One last piece, people say, what do you guys do with technology? So we offer generative AI technology at multiple layers, right? And so the simple version of this is, If you look at the bottom of the stack, we offer infrastructure to be the most cost performant, right? Price performant, cost effective place to run these applications. At the middle layer, we allow you to use very efficient, easy to use tools. And at the top layer, we offer applications that let you use it directly. So if you want to learn more, you're in the right place. Just come over. There's generative AI in every single booth over there. So just walk up and ask, and we can tell you all about it. And with that, I want to be really proud because I finished in 20 minutes, and they said I had 25. So I'm giving you back 5 minutes. So thank you all for listening. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them over here.